Yes, after 10 plus years of using an iPhone, of being an iPhone user, Apple fanboy, I decided to switch. More specifically, I got a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, which is probably the best Android phone money can buy right now. It has the best cameras, the best processor, the best display, and it is crazy for me to say this, but at least this phone, the S24 Ultra, I think is better than the iPhone. There are so many features and options on this phone that are either better than what we have on the Apple side, or that are simply not available on the Apple side. When I first got my hands on it, for example, the first thing that caught my attention was the OS layout, because it is quite different than the one I had on the iPhone. There is this home screen setup where you can add your most used apps, the ones you use 90% of the time, but then if you need something else every once in a while, you have a customizable library with every other app. And I make emphasis on that it's customizable because that is not a thing on the iPhone. Technically, on the iPhone, you also have an app library. You have to swipe all the way to the right, and it's more of like a scroll down system instead of pages. But it's very different. It is not customizable at all. Apple sets everything up for you in their folders with their names and their apps in the folders they think are better for you in your app library. But I mean, from experience, when I had it on the iPhone, that is not even close to the way that I would have liked to organize things on my iPhone. On the S24 Ultra or any other Samsung phone, you do have that customization, and for me at least, it has been the difference between not using the app library on the iPhone and using it on the S24 Ultra. Then of course, there is also a lot of features that are simply not available on the iPhone, like the S Pen. This is a little pen that sits inside of the phone and that, you guessed it, can draw things on your display with a surprising level of precision and low latency. And I'm gonna be completely honest, when I first got the phone, like a lot of people, I thought it was going to be a gimmick. You know, this little plasticky pen that's probably not even good quality and that I'm never gonna use, that's what I thought. But I was wrong. Beyond its size, I would say it works as well as a $100 dedicated Apple Pencil. Another one of those cool features is Samsung DeX, which is probably the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen on a phone. It lets you turn your phone into a full-blown desktop computer to browse the web, send emails, and use any app that's available on your phone. It is pretty insane that you can do this with a phone, and it is pretty insane that you cannot do it with an iPhone. Well, probably you will be able to do it eventually on the iPhone 25 or something, but I feel like that's a pattern we see a lot with iPhones. You do end up getting those cool features that you see on Android, but you see it 8, 9, 10 years later, like USB-C. That was a thing on the Samsung Galaxy S7 in 2017. That is 7 years before we saw it on the iPhone. Or we were talking about it a minute ago, the app library. We saw it on the first Android phone ever with Android 1. But it took Apple, I think 13 or 14 iterations of iOS to include an app library on their phones. And even then, it is not even close when it comes to customization to what we had on the first Android phone. It is pretty mind-boggling. That's actually one of the reasons why I started thinking about switching. It's because technically, what we had always heard was that Apple was late, but they did it the Apple way, and that was always better. They found a twist to improve on the feature and make it better, and then it was worth waiting so long for that feature. But lately, I don't think that has been the case. Like with USB-C, they didn't add anything that you have on any Android phone with USB-C, or with the app library. They made a worse version of the app library, or with widgets, or with bigger displays, or pretty much every modern feature that we had first on Android and then on the iPhone. I don't think Apple has added any flavor, any twist, or any add-on to justify taking 5 more years to implement the feature on their phones. Another big surprise with my S24 Ultra was the overall experience when using it. When I first got the phone, it was very fast, everything loaded up at the speed of light, and I didn't feel any hiccups or stutters when moving around the system, which is something that I was honestly expecting. It is a $1,300 Android phone, and it is supposed to be very fast. But I have to say, I didn't expect for this to last for long. There is this common misconception that when you buy an Android phone, it works very fast for the first couple weeks, but then it starts slowing down and becoming more laggy and stuttery as time goes by, until 1 or 2 years in, you have a very bad experience with the phone. So, of course, that is what I was expecting with the S24 Ultra, to work incredibly fast at lunch and then slowly slow down and show more lag, show more stutter, show more problems as time went on. But it didn't. It didn't slow down at all. Actually, now 6 months in, it is as fast as it was on day one. As fast. It has not slowed down one bit. And let me double down on this because I've been, making videos on this channel. I bought a couple other phones to review on the channel, including old Samsung phones like the S20 and the S21, which are a lot less capable than this one and have already had some software updates. But even then, even those phones are also incredibly fast, incredibly smooth, and incredibly reliable. I was honestly blown away. Android phones, or at least Samsung phones, which are the ones that I've had experience with, are as smooth, as optimized, as fast, as fluid as an iPhone. And I'm not really sure where all of these misconceptions come from, but I had them, and a lot of people do too. Even when it comes to performance inside of apps, I heard so many people say that Samsung phones had stuttery timelines on Instagram and Twitter, and look, maybe that was the case in the past, 10 years ago, I don't know. But as of today, in August 2024, the S24 Ultra and those other two phones, the S20 and S21, which are the ones that I've tried, have very smooth and stable timelines in both of those apps. What is true though about Android phones versus iPhones, and I can say this now from experience, is that the video on these apps, for some reason, still looks better when it comes from an iPhone. I have done the test comparing both to see how big of a difference it actually was, and although it is not as big as some people make it seem to be, I still think the iPhone looks a little bit better. To be fair though, I have done some investigation, and this has nothing to do with the quality of the cameras on the actual phone. I think this is because the iPhone captures the data on those apps straight from the sensors, straight from the cameras, and on Android phones, it does sort of like a screen capture of the camera of the phone. So it's like a double layer of compression, which always makes it look a little bit worse. That's the reason there's a difference in the visual way they look. I'm not an expert on the topic, but that's bottom line what's happening. The iPhone captures video and Android phones capture a screen capture of the video. Also, speaking of cameras, the S24 Ultra has, well, pretty much everything you could expect from a flagship phone in 2024. And I'm not going to get into the specs and stats because this is not a normal review, but I do want to speak about the video quality on this phone. Because there's another one of those misconceptions. A lot of people seem to think that iPhones have better video than every other phone, every other Android phone. Because of the codecs, because of the way Apple processes video, the common belief is that iPhones always look better than the rest of Android phones. And maybe that used to be the case. I'm not denying that. I'm pretty sure actually that used to be the case because I remember watching a comparison videos back in 2016, 2017 of iPhone 10 versus Galaxy S9 footage. And yes, the iPhone 10 captured noticeably better video than the S9, even though they both had comparable lenses, comparable sensors. But I feel like, well, I know now for a fact because I have tested the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro, and I know it is not the case anymore. And you're gonna know right now because I'm gonna show you. This is a video I captured with my S24 Ultra and my 15 Pro right next to each other. And there is no way on earth you can confidently say one is better than the other. The only real difference I notice are the colors. As always, Samsung is a little bit more vibrant and the iPhone is a little bit more natural looking. Even when I zoom in to try to see detail, I don't really notice any difference. I mean, if you stick your eyes to the screen and go frame by frame, analyzing all the variables, I'm pretty sure there are going to be some differences, but they are both very, very close. What is clearly still better on the iPhone, let's be fair, is the smoothness of the camera app when changing between cameras. It is like dark magic on the iPhone. I mean, it's really amazing. It literally feels like you're just zooming in. There's no visible adjustments or color shifts, which are unfortunately a little bit more apparent on the S24 Ultra. Okay, so performance is great. We have amazing features that we don't have on the iPhone. The cameras are great. Apps work good too. There's only really one thing left to talk about, the big deal about owning an iPhone or any other Apple product, which is the ecosystem. iMessage, AirDrop, iCloud, all of these apps connecting to each other in different ways. Well, yes, it is true. I mean, just because I switched to the S24 Ultra or to Android, I'm not going to bash Apple, and I'm going to be fair. I believe the Apple ecosystem is good. It's a great ecosystem. There's a lot of ways to connect devices to each other. It works very seamlessly, very good. It is not a bad ecosystem. But what a lot of people don't know is that it is not the only ecosystem you can have when you buy a phone. There's also other ecosystems you can take advantage of. And one of the biggest ones I've seen is the Samsung ecosystem. Samsung makes watches, phones, earbuds, tablets, TVs, laptops, fridges, microwaves, washers, ovens, AC systems, air purifiers. Samsung makes a lot of products, and even though this wasn't always the case back in the day, I feel like lately they have been implementing a lot of ecosystem features between all of these devices, like Quick Share, which is like AirDrop but faster, or the SmartThings app, which lets you control your TV using your phone. On top, of course, of all the Google ecosystem features, because at the end of the day, this is also an Android phone, on top of the fact that most apps nowadays store your data in the cloud instead of on your device, so you can access that data in all of your devices anywhere you go. For example, you don't need an ecosystem to sync your music with Spotify. That was probably the biggest eye-opener for me, to be honest, because the one thing that was keeping me from even considering changing lanes and going the Android route was that I was not going to have all of my seamless connections between devices, and that I thought I was going to go back to the Stone Age because I didn't have an iPhone. But I started looking into all of these things that I've been telling you about, and I was like, wait a minute, I actually, if I set everything up right, which I haven't yet, as you can see, I still have a Mac. I probably am going to switch that to a Windows because it has better optimization and connection with Android phones. But as I said, I started looking into all of these things, and I realized it is as big, as powerful of an ecosystem than the one that I have on the iPhone, if not better, because as I said, they make pretty much everything. Imagine being able to have features that connect your air purifier with your phone so you can do things you could only do when both phones are from the same brand. I mean, the opportunities here are endless. I'm excited to see what Samsung does in the future. And yeah, this is sort of like a disclaimer for Apple users that have that mentality that I had. This is no longer the case, my friends. There is light beyond the Apple tunnel. Do research. Trust me, you'll be blown away. There's really only one thing that I miss about the Apple ecosystem, and that is the Apple Notes app. I know, you're probably gonna laugh at me because it's such an absurd thing to say, but my friends, this is a free app that syncs between your phone and your computer, even if it's a Windows computer, and lets you create folders inside of folders inside of folders up to 5 levels deep. As I said, it may sound a little absurd, but there is no other free app that lets you do this. Google Keep is free and accessible from all my devices, but for some weird reason, it doesn't let me create folders inside of folders. Samsung Notes is also free and lets me create folders inside of folders, but it's not available on my computer. And every other decent third-party app has some sort of limitation or paywall to access all their functionalities. I mean, it is really not that big of a deal. What I've done is to keep using Apple Notes on my computer and then send some of those notes to Google Keep so I can access them on my phone, which is a little bit more complicated, but it's fine. It's really not the end of the world. I barely use notes on my phone anyways. And as I said, that was the only thing, the only gripe that I had when switching to Android. I know people living in the US are going to have another gripe. The blue bubble, green bubble thing. You're not gonna be able to use iMessage, so people are gonna think you're weird because you use an Android phone. But that is no longer the case, my friends. I don't really need this. I've done the research for the video, so I can help all of you US citizens get a better, smoother transition. There's this app called Beeper that's not sponsoring this video. It is actually the only app doing this. If there was another app, I would also include it in the list of apps that do this thing. Anyways, that lets you basically use iMessage through their app. I think what they're doing is they have servers with a lot of Mac devices. So you basically give the app your Apple ID and they sort of like text through their Mac servers and then send the messages to the phone. They do a weird mechanism, but bottom line, if you text someone using Beeper on your Android phone, they will see blue bubbles. So they will think you have an iPhone and they won't think you're weird, which I feel like is mainly the reason why people don't want to switch and get the green bubbles. You can also access most of the iMessage functionality, like reacting to messages, liking or emojis, all those things. I think the only ones missing are the latest ones from iOS 18 or 17. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty decent thing. It's free also. So yeah. There's no excuses. As I said at the beginning, I have been using it for 6 months now as my personal phone. So I feel like I have properly now switched from iPhone to Android. And there's so many things that I have learned, so many improvements and features that I quite simply didn't have before. My only issue with the S24 Ultra, and I've said this many, many times, people keep bashing me in the comments for it. I don't care, it is my opinion. I think the S24 Ultra, it is a little bit too big. I would love to have a S24 Ultra with a smaller size, just like we have on the iPhone. We have a Pro Max and Pro model that's a little bit smaller. That would be incredible because I didn't want to go for the basic S24 because I would be missing on some of the cool features of the Ultra. But I also didn't want it to, have such a big phone. I mean, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. You get used to it. It's not that big of a deal. But ideally, I would like for it to be a little bit smaller. That's the only one thing that's like, it's keeping it from being the perfect phone. And please, calm down on the comment section, okay? As I said, it is just my personal opinion. It is not a bad thing for it to be big. A lot of people buy it because it's big. I personally just don't like that big of a phone. Anyways, if you want to get the S24 Ultra, there is a link in the description with the best price that I found on Amazon. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you found it helpful if you're an Apple user, and I will see you in the next video.